Welcome, everyone. It's a real pleasure for us to be here today to have a conversation on this really important topic in the gender space around empowering women to spearhead socio-economic recovery in 2021 and beyond. We all know the impact that COVID has had, not just on the world, but more selectively on women across the world, and more so in Africa. So this is a really exciting time for us to be having this conversation and bringing together people to share ideas on how they can move the gender agenda forward. And we're really glad to have a distinguished panel with us who will introduce in a short while. But in the meantime, let me tell you a bit about AVPA. Some of you may know a bit about us, some of you may not. So next slide, please. We are a Pan-African network of social investors who are looking to transform the African social investment landscape by collaborating to increase the flow of capital into social investments in the continent. Africa is at a really pivotal level. We are entering the last 10 years of the SDGs, and it's a time when we are seeing a reduction in aid. The COVID crisis was unprecedented, and it's brought some enormous challenges to the continent. And this is a time when we need to think differently about how we solve our problem. And from a capital perspective, we don't have enough money in our social development space to solve our social challenges. So we've got to think differently about crowding in and partnering with the private sector. And so AVPA is really unique in the context that we bring together deployers of grants, debt, and equity, what we call the continuum of capital, because the solutions of the future will be blending all these competencies and resources into a very cohesive vehicle to be able to fund and close our funding needs. We are part of an international network of sister organizations, as you can see on the bottom right. We are sister networks in Asia, Latin America, and Europe. And that means we're able to connect Africa to the world and connect the world to Africa. We offer a really good landing pad for investors coming into Africa who are looking for a co-investment community and or investable deal flow. Next slide, please. AVPA is headquartered in Nairobi. We have offices in Johannesburg and in Lagos, West Africa. We are looking to, we'll be looking in the next couple of months at Francophone Africa, North Africa. Next slide, please. So as you can see, we're able to cover the sub-Saharan region quite effectively as it is, bringing together social investors from right across. And from our strategic priorities, here are the things we're focusing on at the moment. The first thing is to really help people understand the problem that we're trying to solve, which is how do we close the social investment financing gap on the continent? And this is especially on the back of what we're seeing around things like declining aid. You may have seen that the British government, for example, has just reduced its aid budget from 0.7 to 0.5% of GDP. We're seeing US aid coming down as well. And all of this leads to the fact that we are not going to be having as much aid and or government funding in future to fund our problem. So how do we think differently about funding our social investment issues? To the second point, then part of the solution will be to look at investor education on innovative finance. And on the third point, we know that the bridesmaids in this whole equation are the grant makers and how they can support the creation of catalytic capital on the continent to unlock and de-risk social investment so we can crowd in private sector capital. And all of that boils down to point number 4 there, which is really the powerful network we're building on the continent of a diverse group of social investors providing financial, human, and intellectual capital into the African social investment space. So that's who we are as AVPA. I look forward to you guys enjoying the webinar, so I'll pass you on to Mary Jo.
Thank you so much, Frank. Hello, everyone. It's really an honor to be here. Thanks so much for including me. I'm based in the US, and I see we really have a global network. And for sure, the pandemic has reminded us in stark terms that we're all connected. So the issues that affect one of us is definitely affecting all of us. Such a great topic, and we have just a wonderful panel. Before we get started, just a reminder to please mute. If you have questions, you can put them in the chat, but also please feel free, put reflections, comments, resource ideas. We can use the chat actively to share, connect, learn. And we're going to start off before our first panelist with a quick poll. So we're going to do 2 polls during our time together, and I ask you to just participate in this first one, please. Great, thanks so much. We're going to start off with Patricia Jumi, who's going to share some of her reflections. You have her bio, so I'm not going to reread that, but I will say personally, it's great to see Patricia again. We met in October, I believe it was, in Ethiopia at the Social Enterprise World Forum. And we talked quite a bit there about the need for more supports for women social entrepreneurs and women leaders and investors. A lot's happened since Patricia and I were together last, and it's great to see you. I'll turn it over to you, Patricia.
Thank you so much, Mary Jo, and such a pleasure to see you again. Thank you, Frank, for the introduction to what your organization does. And I just want to express my gratitude for being part of this conversation where we're talking about empowering women and spearheading that empowerment in 2021 in light of what has happened. And I would like to welcome everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. I don't know what time zones you're in, but I'm looking forward to an engaging conversation. And also just want to extend greetings to my fellow panelists, Michelle, Ada, Kirote, and Michelle. So such a pleasure to meet you. So I'll start off by introducing what my organization does. So as Mary Jo mentioned, I'm Patricia Jumi. I'm one of the co-founders of Growth Africa. And from our name, Growth Africa, we are passionate about growing Africa. And we self-identify as Growth Frontiers. And the whole purpose of our existence is we want to exponentially increase the rate and scope of success of early stage post-revenue entrepreneurs and businesses in Africa into exceptional impact enterprises. And this journey started from the fact that there's been so many conversations in the continent for the last 17 years that we've existed as an organization, where the growth of businesses has been inhibited by lack of access to affordable capital or relevant capital. And when you talk to investors, the conversation has been, but we can't find businesses that are interesting enough for us to invest in. And then on the other hand, when you talk to the entrepreneurs, they say that they do not actually understand what it is that the investors are looking for. And at the forefront of what we are doing is we want to see that there is a positive change and economic transformation in Africa. And it's our belief that that is going to happen through SMEs that we support. And we believe because SMEs account for 74% of the economy in Africa, that these are the people that we need to engage with. These are the people we need to empower to ensure that that economic transformation happens through creation of jobs and also income generating opportunities. So from where we sit, we are currently in 6 countries in Africa. And as you can see from that map, we have not yet conquered Africa. So we still have a long way to go. But the idea is to actually be in literally every country in Africa, because jobs are going to come from these SMEs. And we do this through acceleration activities, mentorship, networking, and peer-to-peer engagement. Our acceleration program is a 6-month program that looks at different aspects of the business. And it has a couple of things attached to it. So we do boot camps, workshops, and one-on-one engagements, but with the whole intention of really just trying to understand what is the purpose to which these businesses exist? What is it that they want to accomplish? Are they aware of their environment and the external circumstances that could impede their growth? And then how can they self-identify the challenges that are affecting their businesses and then how can they close those challenges in order to come up with growth plans that could attract capital. And where we are coming from is, again, through conversations that we've had with the different stakeholders in the ecosystem, where we realize that the only way we are going to create a change for us as Growth Africa in Africa is through capacitating the entrepreneur before we capacitate the business. So giving that leadership empowerment to the owners of the business to know why they started this business, to be in touch with what is happening around them. And then through those skills that we accord them, they're able then to create that change in their business. And as you can see from what I've shared there, we've worked with 467 founders, 287 ventures, of which 44% of these are women. Now, as an organization, we are around 35 staff. 80% of our staff are women. So we are proud that it's one of the things that we're doing concerning women empowerment. So as we have grown in this journey, of course, one of the things that has come out so clearly to us has been that a lot of the SMEs we deal with, majority of them are run by women. And we believe that when we empower women, then the whole economy is empowered. That is the ethos from where we are coming from. However, we've also seen that a large number of the women that we work with have not been able to access investment to the level that they should to ensure that this growth happens. And one of the things that we've decided to do is to tailor make our program to really understand the specific unique needs that women are facing, so that we are able to really meet them at their point of need. So we are sector agnostic, and that means then that we are able to attract different sectors. What we've realized is a lot of the women are in manufacturing, agriculture, retail, tourism, and these are some of the sectors that have been affected by COVID-19. And so that has meant that we've had to be quite agile to really see to it how we can assist these women to overcome the challenges that COVID has created, as well as the opportunities that COVID has brought with it. So I'll stop there for now and get back to Mary Jo so that we can get into the main discussion.
Thank you so much, Patricia. Just a quick question for you. There's evidence that in these sorts of microfinance schemes that are focused on empowering women, that often in the cultural context, there's tension with the men in their lives, and it's ideal that, you know, we're bringing women and men along together to work on these issues. Can you share a little bit, being that you're really at the forefront of these, dealing with these emerging ventures, what measures do you think we can take to address this, you know, this deep-rooted cultural issue of that kind of gender tension?
Great, thank you so much for that. So I think first and foremost, it's something that I've experienced because in Growth Africa's journey, before we moved up to what we are right now, an accelerator, we used to be an SME lending facility and worked with over 1,800 clients, of which 70% of those were women. And time in, time out, what we used to realize when the women would come to access capital, they needed to have their husbands sign on for the loans that they were taking. And some of them had quite ambitious plans and felt that they could make those decisions without involving the husband. But then if you see how microfinance is structured, a lot of the collateral will either come from the chattels of the assets in the home, or will come through assets that are either in the husband's name or jointly shared. So it's inevitable that if a woman has to access finance, they actually need to have a dialogue with their husband to let them understand why they're taking the money and why they need that collateral. But as we've gone along, we've seen that even in our own organization, as we deal with you know, women who earn who generate revenue between $50,000 to $100,000 a year, depending on which country they're located, because those are the kind of entrepreneurs we work with. I believe for me, the measures that should be put in place is, first of all, we need to understand that we are different players who are trying to solve the different challenges in this continuum of women empowerment. And everybody is tackling women at different levels of that continuum. So one size doesn't fit all. So when I'm dealing with women who are in an accelerator stage, how I'm going to connect with them is different from how I'm going to deal with women who are perhaps micro enterprises and also accessing microfinance. So one of the things that we realized for us starts from the leadership angle, capacitating them to actually understand their ambition. So we are very categorical that we will take the women who are ambitious, who are committed. The business is not a livelihood. The business is not a survival business. They've seen the big picture and they want to be counted among those that are creating this big change. That doesn't mean that the ones who are not doing that, who are doing this for survival, are not important, but that is the niche that we've carved out for ourselves. And so we start to understand what are these unique things that they face. Some of them are in the supply chain, some of them working in industries that require a lot of capital, they're capital intensive. So we start first from building the confidence of the women. Who are you? What do you want to achieve? How are you going to achieve it? And who are you bringing along to achieve that? And the beauty of our program is that our program is actually gender agnostic, if I can use that term. So we have both male and female. And in that sense, we have a lot of peer-to-peer interactions, not only within the country that we operate in, but pan-African. And actually what we've seen, especially during the COVID-19 period, if I use that example, there's been courageous conversations because when COVID-19 happened, women were kind of retrograded back to being, responsible for the home. You had to be around when your kids are doing their homework. You had to be around to ensure that what your kids are watching on the internet is safe. And at the same time, you had to run your business. So the conversation changed. And so when we've had these honest, courageous conversations with the men in our cohorts, because it's cohorts of 15, these conversations have come up. So I'm here with you. I have to think about the home. I have to contribute to the family income. How does that actually happen? And I believe there's been that empathy as well, trying to understand where the women are coming from and where the men are coming from. So we don't treat them differently, but we provide them with the same tools, and it is up to you to grab the opportunity that is available for you. And what we've seen from that on the onset, as an example, one of the entrepreneurs in Ghana, when COVID had just struck out, there was a big contract that came out to supply PPE. And she was required to put down $500,000 with the supplier just to get that contract. And you could see the whole peer-to-peer engagement and opportunity between the men and the women in the court, helping her to come up with this money and accessing this money from a bank to ensure that she got that contract. So that is one of the ways. The other measures for me is, again, understanding where each one of us lies in the continuum and telling the positive stories. When I look at women empowerment now and just Google, everything will come from a perspective of the micro woman, the rural woman. It's one-sided. And so when we keep on hearing these stereotype stories, then we kind of create a certain mindset. But if media and us and the work we do through either our newsletters, testimonials, we are able to tell the story of these women who've made it and bringing the angle of how they've actually made it in competitive environments and competitive work, I believe that the men can be more engaged to see it's not just a woman issue, but it's an opportunity that is meeting a woman who is prepared. So for me, it's also, showcasing these positive stories, changing the narrative and ensuring that this narrative is communicated in a positive way. The other thing, again, is, collateral. We keep on talking about collateral and the banks, and quite frankly, it's been quite frustrating that we had a life-changing pandemic and a lot of money was circulated to the banks to enable businesses survive this period and ensure that the businesses don't close down. And we still had to face the same issue of you had to provide collateral. So it means as well that the agility that the banks need to really understand, situations has not really changed. So one of the things we also need to consider is when we're developing these products and services, are we really taking into consideration the current situation that is happening in our environment and being agile enough and innovative enough to, change that? Because if you look at it, a lot of the businesses that women were affected in involve digital skills. All of a sudden, everybody had to be online. Everybody had to be on WhatsApp. Everybody had to supply or change their business model or understand their customers better. How was that going to happen if they didn't have access to zero-rated solutions or solutions that were necessary at that particular time? So those are some of the measures that we could put in place. And I believe in our role as Growth Africa, that is why it's important to have conversations we are having now, partnering with investors, partnering with capital providers, partnering with mentors and partners to see how we can collectively solve the now challenges that women face at the different times of their enterprises.
Thank you so much, Patricia. So many things to think about. I see that Emily has added a note in the chat, and I think it's fantastic. She writes about mobile money as an important solution or another tool for women. So feel free, if you have additional ideas, to build off of the speakers, to share, as well as questions. We're going to hear from all the speakers first, and then we'll get to questions. But feel free, as they're percolating and you're listening, to put them in the chat. So thanks, Patricia. We're going to move on to Michelle. And I'll just say, I've done some teaching at Brown University, and One Acre was a case study we've used for many, many years. It's a fantastic organization, so it will be exciting to hear your reflections. Michelle?
Thank you, Mary Jo, and thank you for inviting me to be part of this panel. I'm really excited to be contributing to such an important conversation as we gear up on firming up post-recovery plans and processes. So I don't know if my presentation is up. Okay. Thanks, Frank. Great. So One Acre Fund, just briefly who we are. We are a not-for-profit social enterprise in the agriculture sector. We work with smallholder farmers, and really we are about trying to work with them to make them more prosperous. We currently serve over 1 million farmers in 9 markets in Africa. We are in Burundi, Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda, Malawi, Zambia, and then we have a small pilot in Nigeria and Ethiopia. One Acre Fund's experience has been, and I think this is quite self-evident, is that the bulk of smallholder farming activities is carried out by women. And that first picture there really represents our clients. One Acre Fund, we work to empower farmers and predominantly women to end cycles of hunger and poverty by dramatically improving their farm productivity. What we do is provide a complete service bundle. We deliver last mile, high quality agricultural inputs on credit. And then we provide holistic training support throughout the season. And this program design is coming up as a complete solution to address the key structural barriers that rural women face. So we found that a lot of smallholder farmers, they have challenges accessing high quality farm inputs. Either the quality is not good or the agro dealers are miles away. They don't have access to the latest farming techniques so that they can maximize their yields on small plots of land. And they don't always have the capital that they need to buy the inputs when they need them. So we provide that complete service bundle, and that ensures that they can be able to maximize their livelihood and maximize their farming outputs. We ensure that the benefits are fully accessible to women through careful program design. We provide very practical community and field-based training, which accounts for the context within which smallholder farmers find themselves in, and accounts for the different literacy levels. We also use a lot of group activities and other interventions that make sure that we are engaging in a way that is culturally acceptable. And we have found that this has improved female participation. The model that we've got has proven impact. We started in 2006 in Bungoma, Kenya with 40 farmers. We have grown largely organically to over 1 million farmers, and consistently our clients have seen an average of 40% increase in their farm income after supported activities in a single season. Where we are now, we currently employ over 8,000 people. The bulk of these are based in the rural areas in which we work, and over 50% are female. We rely heavily on data to design approaches which are responsive to the lived experience of smallholder farmers. One of the things that we have found is that it is absolutely important to disaggregate data in order to understand gender implications. As was previously mentioned, there is no single narrative, there is no single experience, and disaggregated data allows us to understand the lived experience of a gendered lived experience within different contexts, and then to adjust our interventions to respond to those. We recognize that accurate and gender disaggregated data is time consuming and more costly, but it has been worth it. And it is absolutely critical to understanding the gaps in programming and the areas that need focus and correction so that you actually get the outcomes that you're looking for in terms of women empowerment. Moving on to the next slide. So the learnings that we've had, I mean, like COVID really had a major impact across all sectors. And within the agriculture sector, it also had an outsized negative impact on women. But one of the things that we did realize last year is that challenges also trigger opportunities for innovation, which can unlock outcomes that lead to better women's empowerment. So I'll give two examples from our experience in Rwanda last year. So when COVID hit, we were forced to reduce our face-to-face interactions. Our program is very high touch, it's very trust-based. We've got a very heavy community presence. We are hand in hand with the farmers. And during COVID, like, we couldn't do this much. And it was around the time that our community-based agricultural extension officers were recruiting farmers for the new season. And when we couldn't do this, then we tried having more radio testimonials and more radio programming to promote awareness of our program and to encourage farmers to recruit. And we learned that 4 times more women than men were being persuaded by the radio testimonials. And so we had a lot more women signing up to the program, which of course increases the chances of getting the benefits of the program that we have. And this is something that we intend to continue using even after COVID. The second thing that we learned was with regards to access to technology. So the mobile phone penetration is much lower for women in Rwanda. And we ran a trial last year where we were offering mobile phones on credit to farmers within our program. And the orders for the mobile phone far exceeded our expectations by over 170%. And 45% of the orders that we got were coming from women, compared to 37%, which is the national rate of women phone ownership in Rwanda. And this showed that when you are integrating different interventions to not just help farmers become more prosperous, but also on access to other areas that would improve quality of life or improve access to information, that there is really quite a demand. We are hopeful that the increased mobile penetration for women will help increase women's access to technology and address the technology-related barriers and inequalities that we see. And then finally, on what is needed, I'd say, like, arguably, like, prioritizing food security is absolutely essential. COVID-19 really brought health and health related impacts to the fore, but also really brought about the connection between health and food security and nutrition. And it's absolutely essential that as we go forward with post-recovery, that prioritizing food security and designing interventions that will allow farmers to contribute to addressing food insecurity will be important. We need to remember that it is estimated that enabling female smallholders to achieve their full productivity could reduce the number of malnourished people by as much as 150 million worldwide. And being able to address malnourishment would be the first step to achieving gender equality and all its follow-on benefits. Secondly, we really need to push forward systemic change that will move us away from being gender aware to get into the space where we are gender transformative. Now, gender awareness is when we focus on the actions, identify the actions that organizations need to take on their own. So like, for example, looking at your organizational design, looking at how you're structured and how that impacts women, but that will be linked only to your organization. Whereas when we move to gender transformative action, this involves us working together to address systems and system-wide.
Your training.
I'm sorry?
I think somebody needs to mute.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
So gender transformative actions are really taking a systems-wide approach and really addressing the barriers that prevent women empowerment or have slowed down women's empowerment. So increasing our access to services and awareness of services, enhancing female leadership opportunities, ensuring that digital solutions are more accessible and tailored to engage with women, and also engaging men in empowering women.
Thank you so much, Michelle. You raised so many issues. I have one follow-on to this slide. Given how central women are in food production and the value chain, can you speak a little about what investors need to be thinking about to make sure they're not left behind in the recovery?
Sure, thank you. One of the things that social investors need to be looking at is identifying organizations that are using gender lenses and taking a gendered approach in their programming, and social investors themselves also applying a gender lens to their work. So some of the things that they would be looking out for is where there is active listening, that there are programs that are based off of really hearing and learning from women's lived experiences and the kinds of issues that they face, what their pain points are, and then designing programs that respond to that. Looking for programs that are more flexible because, like I said earlier, like there is no single narrative. And there has to be flexibility between women staff, women clients, women in rural areas, women in the cities, professional, and programs that are flexible and that are tailored to provide that as much as possible individualized response that actually produces results, impact is important. The other thing that social investors can be looking at, and also for social investors themselves, is being a lot more intentional about the actions that are being taken or the interventions that are being taken. Really taking the time to understand what the actual issue is and what would unlock these barriers to produce a positive outcome. We don't always know what our blind spots are. So again, I'll talk about like data and having disaggregated data, because this does bring up information that isn't obvious. And that helps make programming and intervention a lot more impactful.
Thank you so much. Very thoughtful and a bit provocative. We have some questions which we'll get to after we've heard from all the panelists. So thanks, keep the questions coming. We're going to take a moment for a quick poll before we hear from the next panelist. So we'll pull that up, please. Okay, and show that the topics, please, to share in the chat. That would be great. We're going to move on and hear from Ada as our next speaker.
Good afternoon. I'm not seeing my slides. Are they up?
Here they are.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, depending on which part of the continent you've dialed in from. I'm really excited to have joined the AVPA and SANCALP Africa Summit 2021 webinar today to discuss ways in which women can be empowered to spearhead socio-economic recovery in 2021 and beyond. Do you mind moving to the next slide, please? Next slide, please. Next slide. Thank you. So, I mean, the subject about empowering women to spearhead economic recovery in 2020, economic recovery cannot be coming at a better time than now, when COVID-19 pandemic has continued to have a global effect on lives and livelihoods. So the negative fallout of the pandemic, research and a lot of evidence has shown that it has had a regressive effect on gender equality, and has even clawed back some of the progress that has been made over the past 2 decades, especially with respect to entrepreneurship and women in entrepreneurship and employment. And, you know, a lot of information has been shared today. I really loved Michelle's presentation showing the impact of the pandemic on women in agriculture. So while different companies and sectors may take different approaches to the business case for gender smart solutions, to empower women in accelerating socioeconomic recovery, at the International Finance Corporation, our motivation is the knowledge that when companies and people, no matter their gender, are able to reach their full potential, then families and communities and economies can achieve sustainable growth and prosperity and build back better in a post-pandemic world, because the impact of the pandemic is something that we all need to put our hands on deck to rebuild after recovery. I'll get to that shortly. So on the slide, I've sort of shown an overview of some of the programs at the corporation. We have developed tools and resources to help women, to help the private sector support women's economic participation, and even more during the COVID-19 pandemic. On a broad level, we have, in terms of focus on women SMEs, we have our Banking on Women program that has dedicated more than about 2.86 billion US dollars to women SMEs through investment and advisory services that we have offered to financial institutions, as well as our Wi-Fi program that has committed $75 million to reach 35,000 women SMEs across different countries. So these programs focus on women's entrepreneurship to promote their access to finance, markets, and assets. But in particular, during the pandemic, we also launched a COVID-19 finance response with 8 billion in fast-track financing to help companies to keep running, especially financial institutions to keep lending, thereby helping to secure jobs and contracts. We've also had numerous programs that we have designed, but I'll share in particular as well on our peer learning platform. And I think that this really keys into what Michelle had talked about in terms of moving from gender awareness programs to gender transformative action. So what the peer learning platform does it's designed to create global communities of practice for private sector companies to tackle barriers to women's economic participation in employment and entrepreneurship. So the platforms also help to increase evidence and awareness around gender inequities. I'll focus on two, the Nigeria to Equal program and Sourcing to Equal. The Nigeria to Equal program is a partnership that the IFC has forged with the Nigerian Stock Exchange to reduce gender gaps across employment and entrepreneurship by bringing together 15 to 30 companies, leading listed companies on the exchange, and exposing them to a toolkit and IFC resources that help them to address specific barriers and tackle challenges that hinder women's participation as leaders, entrepreneurs in the corporate value chain, and employees in general. So that's the Nigeria to Equal program. We also have Sourcing to Equal, which is in partnership with the Norway government to increase access to markets for women SMEs through private sector procurement opportunities. So globally, we see that the corporate spend of private sector companies is about 1%. Corporate procurement spend is about 1% across the globe. And what Sourcing to Equal is doing is to increase inclusive sourcing across private sector companies in Africa. So these are some of the initiatives that we have put in place to address and help private sector companies tackle these challenges and barriers head on, by improving their capacity, providing tools and resources that they require to address these challenges. And the platforms are also designed to boost business performance, investor confidence in the companies, and help them implement the gender smart solutions that also address emerging issues from the pandemic. Do you mind moving to the next slide, please? Thank you. So in terms of new learnings, we've seen, overall, we've seen that the pandemic has had a regressive effect on gender parity and has also had an estimated 3 to 8 points cut on Africa's GDP growth. We found that there are several issues that emerged during the pandemic. In terms of employment, because of women's overrepresentation in vulnerable sectors, there are loss of jobs, loss of income, resulting from the aggressive lockdown systems that were put in place by governments and countries. We saw reduced staff safety during lockdowns. There was an increase in gender-based violence, slowdown in growth and market expansion, especially supply chain disruptions, leading to a reduction in women's participation in entrepreneurship as well. So what we saw was that a lot of women businesses were either forced to scale down, shut down, or repurpose entirely. So how do we address these issues going forward? I like to say that given the complexities and uncertainties that the pandemic has created, the issues that we see and that have emerged are not just tough, they are wicked problems, that require extensive collaborations and consultations across sectors and across stakeholders. So to effectively address these gender inequalities that we have seen, there are three ways that I look at it. First of all, we need to protect what already exists, what is left from the pandemic, and then help businesses recover, especially women SMEs, because we know that when you support a woman-owned business, you're not just supporting that business, you're supporting a whole village, and then also help organizations and institutions build back better. Some of the pre-pandemic systems that we had were not supporting women already. So in helping to build back better, we're saying that as we redesign, for instance, the workplace for women in employment, how do we build it to ensure that it is friendly and allows women to advance in their careers as they progress? So 2 points that I would like to really put a spotlight on under the overarching objective of protecting, recovering, and building back better would be that as we invest in actions and in solutions, we need to ensure that we are also strengthening and creating infrastructures that support women's economic participation. It could be access to finance, markets, or assets, digital and financial inclusion, the care economy, to ensure that the disproportionate burden on women for care, right, is reduced, and they have safe and quality care facilities that they can use and ensure that they have more time to invest in economically impactful activities. And then, of course, respectful workplaces as well. I cannot overemphasize the multi-stakeholder partnerships that need to happen to promote gender-smart initiatives and reduce gender gaps across all facets. So these are some of the things that I thought to focus on in this conversation. And for the purpose of time, I would like to stop here.
Thank you so much, Ada. You raised many questions for me. One I'd like to drill down on a little bit first is just the issue of collateral for credit. Such a challenge before COVID, bigger challenge even in this current environment, but getting access is just so critical for women. Can you speak a little bit about how you see addressing that?
Yes. So, I think one of the first questions to ask is, what are the challenges of financial institutions in lending to SMEs? First of all, is the risk and capital, access to capital. So, one of the things that I would say is that financial institutions need to, first of all, understand that women are a good investment, right? To women SMEs are good to invest in because there's sufficient evidence to show that they are better at managing credits. And from our own records, and data under the Banking on Women program, a recent report we published showed that for women SMEs, of the portfolio to women SMEs, there was at least 5% less NPL for women SMEs and their portfolio. So that's strong evidence that financial institutions need to invest in women. But even beyond that, in terms of risk, we need to then begin to look at other methods of credit check. There are some of our client FIs that are already launching cash flow lending facilities. So for instance, in Nigeria, one of the banks, Access Bank, under the Wi-Fi program, and we're working with them on that, has launched a digital cash flow lending platform for women to ensure that women are able to borrow without collateral, one, and then putting it on a digital platform also ensures that they do not need to come to the bank, because post-pandemic, banks have to reduce high touch points. So it has to be low touch, high tech approach to lending. So the digital cash flow lending that the Access Bank has implemented, one of the IFC clients, has enabled women to be able to access credit, for instance, from where they are and without collateral, basically based on their business cash flow. There are also other methods like lending to savings groups so that you can apply social pressure for repayment, peer pressure for repayment. And then, of course, depending on mobile phone transaction history, there's one of the programs that's currently being designed on e-commerce where you can lend to SMEs that are on the e-commerce platforms based on their history of payment and history of delivery on that platform. So banks need to continuously look for other means of doing their credit checks so that they're comfortable enough to lend. And of course, on the DFI side, providing credit guarantees and providing capacity building for financial institutions to lend to businesses continues to be a priority.
Thank you so much, Ada. Lots to think about. We're going to shift over to Nkrote for our final speaker, and then we're going to open up for questions. So keep them coming. I've been gathering them and really appreciate it. And Nkrote, we're on to you.
Thank you so much, Mary Jo, and good morning, good afternoon, good day to each and every one of you. It's such an honor to be here having this important discussion. And thank you to my fellow panelists as well, aside from AVPA, because I'm just learning so much even as we're going through the discussion. So even as my slides come up, I wanted to tell you about the Women on Boards Network in Kenya. It is a membership network, which was set up in 2014 to encourage and accelerate diversity on boards by ensuring that there is a pool of board-ready women. And even as we go to the next slide, why we, my co-founders and I set this network up is because we had been asked some interesting questions. Around that time, there had been an executive order that 1/3 of all board members in government-owned entities should be women. And the question that we heard, even as we were involved in policy making and in corporate governance training, was where are these women? And we were like, right here. And from an understanding that at that particular time, globally, the statistics were still very low in terms of women who are holding board seats, particularly in public listed companies. At that time, it was just about 12%. Now, at the beginning of 2020, I've taken a conservative statistic to show that only about 16.9% of board seats at the beginning of 2020 were held by women. Depending on the countries that are involved in any statistical review or research, you will find that that statistic could go up to 24%, but also recognizing that the number of countries in Africa which are reviewed in such research is usually very low, 1 to 2 countries at most. And so understanding where we are, we were of the view that we need to bring together women, ensure that there's promotion and encouragement of leadership at policy making and decision making levels, and to ensure that even those who are already holding such positions are reskilled and upskilled continually so as to add value, and also to look forward so that the next generation of board members is more diverse and better balanced from a gender perspective. And the reason we looked at this is because we have found, or both from our own experience, but even from global statistics, that having a different voice, a diverse voice whether it is gender or any other type of inclusion or inclusivity, actually contributes to better governance, more effectiveness in strategic oversight of organizations, challenging that organization, the management, or even the industry to enhance client or community insights, to take a diversity lens and particularly gender diversity lens in heightening innovation to meet client or societal needs, to attract and retain top talent, to have strong performance on non-financial indicators, and then onward to financial indicators. And so how we do this is, first and foremost, we have women and men as well joining the network. We provide training and dialogue opportunities on a variety of topics that will support the women to be better board members and to understand the dynamics that affect the organizations and the industries which they're serving and their impact on the society. And therefore, it enables these women to have a more positive impact on the boards that they get to serve. The training is usually corporate governance training, which has an element of leadership for women. We have dialogue on national policy, regional, continental policy around gender. We have dialogue around specific topics that would assist the board members improve their directorship and add value. Other initiatives we have are mentorship, global exposure by linking to mentors globally and exposing women to leadership across the globe, national dialogue, county forums, board profiling so that women are able to put forward their profile to serve, board admission. So we have a database where we're able to respond to any organization that would be looking for board-ready women of different skills, as well as junior membership. We started the junior membership program a couple of years ago, where we are addressing girls especially. It's actually 90% girls and young ladies and 10% boys and young men from the age of 11 to 26 to improve their leadership skill and address what it means to be on a board even as they get to that age. The outcome is that we have over 500 registered members so far. We have trained over 400 women in corporate governance. We have over 60 women who have been placed on boards in various sectors of the Kenyan economy, some in East Africa as well. We have over 30 active members, active mentors globally, and over 230 women who have been placed in senior leadership or C-suite positions, and 1,100 participants in our dialogue events. Looking at the next slide, we did have learning that came through from 2020. I won't go into all of it in the interest of time, but just to say that one of the areas that came through is that women in leadership are resilient. We looked at the way in which they applied the rigor of logic and timing of execution to help the organizations where they were serving as directors to balance between the near-term challenges and long-term reemergence. We supported the women in our network to upskill and reskill on crisis management, on business continuity. We supported the women in mental and emotional well-being. We did have quite a number of our members who For example, we partner with the Organization of Women in International Trade, who their organizations or their businesses were deeply impacted by COVID-19. And some of them required support just to understand how they can keep themselves strong so that they could reimagine their businesses and reemerge after the pandemic. We strengthened our collaboration in that season. We realized linked arms provide a bedrock for continued learning and reimagination. So we were able to handhold over the last 2 years, but more so even in 2020, the diffusion of the Women on Boards network model. In Sierra Leone, they now have women on boards. In Liberia, they have women on boards. We are working with some other entities in East Africa. We were able to engage in global partnerships to increase or enrich experiences with lead women in Malaysia, with a South African leadership institution, with the IFC, with Breakfast Club Africa, so that our members are able to learn and also share experiences. And we also realize that engagement can just, especially using online platforms, just went, through the roof. We had participants participating in our training from across the globe. Social media engagement, particularly for the junior members, really worked. And we had coteries, small groups of women who were able to support each other through specific challenges that they were facing, both in their leadership, but also in their organization. And these have worked very well. On to the next slide. It is just a recognition that the barriers that women face in leadership are actually the same across the globe. And what our network does is to enable women to understand that these challenges are not uncommon across the globe. Unconscious bias will exist. Gender stereotyping will exist. What we need to do is create awareness so that people are able to mute their dispositions, encourage real conversations around inclusivity, challenge constructively, providing solutions as to how women in leaders can add value and build a positive image of women who are succeeding, because we must address that missing stepping stone, which shows that a McKinsey report on women in the workplace in 2020 actually shows that for 6 years in a row, women are still losing out at the first step to management level. So 47% of women at entry level in most organizations, 28% at middle management, my goodness, 15% at top management, and then only 5% ascend to the CEO level. And we want to address those missing stepping stones, but also internal ceilings and sticky floors, which keep you grounded when you should be rising. So self-governance is something that we emphasize to the women leaders. On to the next, the last slide, and just to just give our experience of what is actually working. What is working is influencing. As women, we encourage all the women leaders who come through the network to open doors, create opportunities for other women, resource appropriately, retain, speak up, and actively support inclusion. One of the challenges that we noted when we started the network is the golden skirt concept, where you'll find that the same woman is sitting on 5, 6, 10 boards. When they leave this board, they get onto another and don't actually support other women to come on in a way of succession. So we encourage influencing. We also encourage women to participate at whatever level of governance, even in the home, in decision making. Start there, participate, be there, and then share your experiences. Take the fear vaccine, because we are here doing vaccines in 2021. Take the fear vaccine and take a courage boost, because courageous conversations around inclusivity are critical in board leadership. Mentorship is key. Of course, there will be some people who will require coaching, and we provide coaching services. We also have other women who require sponsors, someone who will use their substantial social or political capital, which they have garnered in their career or trade, to help high potential women step up at every level of leadership. And then, of course, each and every one of us can actually be a connector. You can actually connect somebody to help them build a leadership team, to connect them with influential people or opportunities. And so all of us must step up. We must be dealers in hope in terms of leadership in all the organizations and in the society that we're in. So thanks, Mary Jo. I think I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you, Nkorte. There's a question here about whether your programs are free or subsidized.
So we have both. We have some free webinars. Some of the monthly forums that we have just to have discussions are free. Some are actually subsidized for members, but also non-members can attend at a small fee. And so contacting us, you would have the whole list of events and see which ones are paid for and which ones are free, and you're free to attend. The corporate governance training is obviously, it's actually paid for. And we have an online and a physical version of the same.
Thank you. As someone who sits on 3 boards, a nonprofit board, a public board, and a private board, I can really celebrate your initiative. I think it's super important. And I think putting women in leadership in all sorts of different organizations. Jennifer mentions their organization where they're focusing on higher education and supporting women to take leadership roles. And I think, you know, it goes across the board in terms of supporting women to move into senior positions. One of the questions came up from a number of different people, and it could apply probably to all of you. I'm going to start with Ada because someone mentioned you. You've talked quite a bit about partnership. Really, you all did. But, you know, the idea of partnership sounds great, but the doing it is very challenging. Can you talk a little bit more about what, you know, how you actually sort of break through in terms of the idea of being more than the sum of the parts in the work that you're doing?
Thank you, Mary. So in terms of partnerships, I think that one of the very important aspects that always needs to be addressed for partnerships to work is that one, it needs to be strategic. There needs to be shared value for all of the participants, for all of the partners in that partnership. Where there's no shared value, then things can fall through because there's no commitment on the part of the partners to the shared goal. So shared value is very important, and then a clear objective as well. So for instance, the partnership that we currently have in Nigeria to reduce gender gaps within employment and entrepreneurship is being run with the Nigerian Stock Exchange. Now, what's the shared value there? We want to reduce gender gaps. We want the private sector to be more resilient. We want women to continue to advance in their career into leadership. We do not want, you know, Inkirote, I hope I pronounced your name properly, right? Referred to the WEF report. The last WEF report showed that when women are advancing from middle management to senior management, 50% of them drop off. So only about 33% move on to senior management and above. And that's really, for lack of a better word, pathetic. So, of course, for us, our goal is clear. And for the Nigerian Stock Exchange, they are committed to this because they know that it's going to boost investor confidence, strengthen the companies that are listed on the exchange, and also they're the first exchange in Africa that's actually having this kind of partnerships to reduce gender gaps within their listed companies. So that's shared value. And they will continue to be committed to it because there's something in it for them. And that's very clear. Another thing is that the partner companies that are also coming on board on the peer learning platform and for the firm level advisory that we'll be providing for them also have an objective. So there's shared value for them as well, because they know that the whole world is continually looking at, I mean, there's this ethical gaze on organizations, right? Where there's high expectation. If you're a listed company, you need to be diverse. There's sufficient data to show that companies with gender diverse boards perform better than their peers. So all of those things are motivators for the companies to participate as well. So in partnerships, the goal needs to be very clear and the shared value needs to be defined such that everyone is committed or for the long haul. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I hope that answers the question.
Yes, it's a big question. Michelle, there's a question for you about digital technology and how to make sure that women who are in very rural situations, maybe illiterate, get access to more support to technology.
Thank you, Mary Jo. With regards to access, I think the formula that One Acre Fund we've learned works is addressing people's lived experience. So if you want to deal with access to technology, going right down to the rural areas, what are the issues that are preventing the access? And it will be multiple issues. And go through that journey with the women, from like getting the phone or the computer or the knowledge in their hands to where the source of that is, and identify the very practical barriers that are there. And then design programs that are responding to the real issues or the real barriers that are preventing this access, even if those programs are disruptive. Because I think traditionally where we've come from, we've had like one-fits-all programming. We've had programming that's top-down. We've got programming that's imposed. It doesn't really reflect what people need. So if you've got to disrupt the status quo, do it. Sometimes it's a risk, but when it is responsive and it really meets that demand, then it can unlock impact and can lead to tangible results. So yeah, I think that those are the two key things that I'd say. And then thirdly, like I said earlier, be ready to be flexible and adjust, monitor how your programs are going. If it's about access to technology, if there's a specific intervention of like financing to buy mobile phones or being able to understand how to use mobile phones, is your intervention working? What are the challenges or the issues that are coming up with the end user? And then redesign and readjust until what you're doing actually responds to the need. Because I think women, we are traditionally underserved, but time and time again, the evidence is there that when you're responsive to the needs of the women as a very big market, then the demand is there.
Thanks so much. Frank just put in a question, which I really love. He says, your programs all seem to be working well. What's holding you back to scale? And I'll even say to scale faster and push even harder, because I think COVID, one of you mentioned about just, holding our own for businesses, small businesses in particular, in this difficult time, and then getting back to sort of pre-COVID. So there's a sense of urgency for sure in these challenging times. So what's holding you back? And I'll just, let's start with Patricia, and maybe we can touch each person.
Thanks, Mary Jo. I wouldn't say there's much holding back, but to run our programs is quite capital intensive because it requires a lot of high touch. So in our case, each cohort of entrepreneurs that we take in are 15 in a cohort. We work with them for 6 months to 3 years, and working with them every mile of that journey of where they are in their business. And when we are getting into new countries, then we need to either go in as partners, identify partners, or go in as ourselves. So COVID, of course, has been a key learning for us as well, to really try and understand how else can we provide the services we're providing. So, of course, the first step was, okay, you can't travel, because our program was really intended on having that Pan-African engagement. So different members of the team travel to different countries, and the different members of those teams come to the headquarters. But then, of course, now because of the COVID protocols, it means that we have to do a lot of things online. And so it's finding that balance between what are you losing online and what can you provide. So do you do a blended learning approach? Do you fully go online? Does that now bring in a different way of looking at partnerships and seeing who can you engage with on the ground that can provide the same services on your behalf without really diluting what it is that you want to give to the entrepreneurs. And I think those are some of the things that we are trying to understand better, because going back to something Kirote shared, one thing that we saw that came out of COVID was the emotional attachment that it had. You know, all of a sudden, the reality that people hadn't done any scenario planning for their businesses, they hadn't really calculated how much runway they had, they didn't understand their burn rate, but also the reality that a lot of women actually had savings, and so started using those savings to make sure that their businesses don't die. Really required us to have a lot of mental health discussions, emotional discussions that previously we felt were out of our territory, but now there wasn't really a clear line between what is business and what is personal. And we realized that some of those conversations are very difficult to have online. You kind of need to be there physically with the person. So that also has made us really think about, if we are to scale, what is the best platform for us to scale to cover most of the countries in Africa, and to be able to still provide the support that we need to provide without diluting it. So quite a lot of key discussions. And of course, this could be the same for the panelists, for organizations that like ours who to some extent depend on funding from, you know, family foundations or donor agencies. The whole conversation around funding also changed during the COVID period. Many organizations had to look internally and focus on what they already have to be able to strategize and see, okay, what direction do we want to take? So I think it's been an eye-opener for all of us to see how we can be agile and come up with products that actually go with the times that we're living in. Yeah.
Thank you. Nukrete, do you have some thoughts on what's holding you back from scaling?
Resources. Being a membership organization or a network, it's really about volunteerism a lot of the time. And even with our programs, we have relied heavily on sponsorship so that we do not make what we are providing unreachable to women across the board. And so until now, even with all the statistics I've given you, we only have 3 staff members, one who is part-time, and that's all we can really afford at the moment, but we have a team of volunteers. So actually, we are really grateful for our partnerships that have assisted us, just as I think Adam mentioned the concept of shared value. We have benefited greatly from the IFC corporate governance program in Africa that has opened doors for us to take our model or to diffuse our model into other countries where we can find like-minded people who understand the criticality of such a network and are able to take it up. Because setting it up actually requires a lot of energy, a lot of work before you can get to the point where you can actually have volunteers who work with you to advance the programs. So that's really, I think that's where we have been.
Thank you so much. Ada?
Thanks, Mary. So in terms of scaling, so for us, it's important that we build evidence before we scale. So I would say that we don't have a challenge scaling per se, but I think that because of the kind of organization that we are, what we do is to pilot and then show results, demonstrable results before we scale. And because it is evidence and research based, we have to spend some time to really prove the concept, before we scale. So that's it. Will I say time is a challenge? Yeah.
Yeah. Time and money. Michelle, you want to add any of your thoughts?
It's pretty much what Ada said. At Acre Fund, we are driven by impact, and there's a balance between speed and getting it right. And if you're really interested in getting it right, then you need to take the time to trial your intervention, see if it actually works, and then scale it.
Thanks so much. Let's see. I'm not sure if this is for anyone in particular. There's a question about procurement, which I think we're doing quite a bit and seeing that as a huge opportunity for scale, and certainly in the US. Is anybody working on procurement as a strategy?
What's the specific question?
Let's see. It's well, the question. There was a comment about procurement being. I think you said maybe 1% globally, and that
Yes.
it needs to be increased in Africa. And sort of how would you do that?
Okay.
How would you increase procurement?
All right. So what we find is that a lot of organizations. So I'll give a specific example. Last year, we had a COVID-19 survey to measure, or rather to understand the gendered impact of COVID-19 on leading listed companies on the exchange. And one of the questions we asked were, two of the questions we asked, one was, how do you currently support women SMEs in your corporate value chain? And the responses, we got 73% response, 71% response, respondents saying yes, they do. And then when we asked the second question, do you have gender disaggregated data for your supply chain? Only 7% of the respondents said they did. So one of the things that we find is that organizations need to better understand how to implement what we call inclusive sourcing within their organizations. I mean, there are different barriers for women's access to corporate procurement contracts. So one, it could be size, the size of the business, access to finance to be able to supply or distribute at the level that the organizations want. But the organizations also have, the corporates also have a responsibility to help women as vendors or distributors to reach their targets or their requirements. So one of the things that we do, I gave the example of sourcing to equal, which is being implemented in Kenya, is to work with companies on a peer learning platform as well. We implement what we call the inclusive sourcing diagnostics, help organizations understand the gaps in their procurement policies and practices, and then they commit to specific actions that they would like to take to close those gaps. And of course, in closing those gaps, like Michelle had referred to, is a transformative effect that we want to see. So we then measure how many more women SMEs do you have supplying to you, or do you have distributing for your organization? So those are some of the steps that we're taking, and that you also see in the Nigeria to Equal program. So I think that organizations need to, first of all, go beneath their data of procurement and look at where they are in terms of their contracts to women SMEs, and then they begin to investigate what the barriers might be. So for instance, at the IFC, the World Bank Group, we're looking to move to, I mean, when we looked in our data as well, it wasn't that great, I'll be honest. And we're looking to move it by at least 7% by the end of 2023. And one of the things that we've been doing, and we will have one in the month of April, is a vendor engagement session where we bring together women SMEs to say, this is how you can be a vendor to the World Bank Group or to the IFC office in your country, etc. Just very practical ways of doing that.
Yeah. I always say you got to walk before you run. So beginning that progress, that path is important. We're close to time. I first of all want to say a big thank you to this really extraordinary panel. You're doing such incredible work. Before I pass it over to Frank for a few closing comments, I'd like to invite everyone on the panel, everyone in the participants as well. What gives you hope? These are tough times. It's been a really tough year. You're working on such incredible challenges. What gives you hope? And just share some thoughts in the chat as we pass it over to Frank to close out.
And as that is happening, Arthur, can you please line up my closing slides? Once again, everyone, thank you so much for making time to join us today. This is really a very important topic for this continent that has received undeservedly so very little attention, or a lot less attention than it deserves. So it's something that at AVPA will be spending a lot of time on, and we ask you to please join us as we have these conversations in days to come, and mobilize our various resources into action. And to that end, as you will know, if you haven't already, please visit our agenda platform. It's the first of our thematic platforms that we've created on our website. You'll be able to see some of the stuff we're looking to do on the platform. You'll be able to look at our communities of practice, and please join the agenda platform if you can. It costs you nothing. So feel very free to plug in and join us in this particular initiative. So this is the first of our agenda webinars, and I'd like to thank the team for led by Joyce, who've done a great job just pulling this together. But it's the beginning of what we'll be doing and the beginning of some really exciting conversations. The next webinar will be on March 18th, and this is tied to our community of practice around gender-lens investing, where we'll be talking to and discussing the topic around financing women entrepreneurs. And we've got some really exciting speakers coming up that will be addressing this topic. So we ask you to register for this webinar, and you can find the registration details on the events section of our website. Next slide. So for those who don't know about our agenda platform, upon which this webinar was hosted, we have built it around three communities of practice. There's a gender-lens investment community of practice, which really looks at building Pan-African talent, supporting women-led entrepreneurs, looking at supporting female fund managers. And that's basically what it looks to do. The Economic Empowerment and Livelihoods Community of Practice looks to support poverty alleviation projects, and the health and safety one is pretty self-explanatory. So, and on the back of that, we'll be offering a lot of support services like the webinar you're on today, trainings, advisory services. We also have on our platform providers of non-financial capital, who will also be supporting the overall provision of non-financial support to the broader network. So you'll find a lot of resources beyond just contacts with your fellow financial capital providers on the website. We hope to partner with many of you if you've got some interesting initiatives, some programs that you'd like to run, some training initiatives that you think could be scaled and offered to a lot wider audience, proven models that need to be broadcast a lot wider, case studies that you feel more people need to read, and knowledge that needs to be shared. Please reach out to us. We'll be very, very happy to work with you in that process. And next slide. If you need to contact any of us on the gender issue, Joyce is your main contact, but alternatively, if you have any personal contacts with the rest of us listed there, feel very free to reach out to us. Alternatively, you could also go to the general queries on the website. Next slide. But also look out for us on social media through Twitter and LinkedIn. There are many ways you can get in touch with us. We'd love to be in touch with as many of you as possible. Over and above the gender platform, we're also very excited to launch two more initiatives to support the impact of social investors in Africa. The first is our Dealshare platform, which We launched about the same time with the Gender Platform in November last year. And the Dealshare Platform is there to support the increased flow of capital into African social investments and increased visibility of African social investment opportunities. So this platform is also found on our website. And it supports a couple of things. It supports the investor who's coming into the social investment space, who's got capital and is looking for a co-investment community, and also a place where he can get investable opportunities or investable deals. The Dealshare Platform is a place for you. If you're an existing investor with an existing investment on the continent and you need additional capital for growth or scale, please use the Dealshare Platform. You'll be able to showcase your investment to other investors in and out of the continent. And the third type of person who would use this is someone providing non-financial capital and things like advisory services, M&E support, all that kind of stuff, which we know is just as important in many cases as the financial capital. You can also use this Dealshare Platform. So please check out our Dealshare Platform. It's a really exciting platform that we're building out, and we hope that many of you take advantage of it. Next slide. And the good thing about our Dealshare Platform, as well as the slides are changing, is that we are able to bring together people providing grants, debt, and equity, tying back to what I said in the beginning, that the sweet spot of blending these different types of capital is what will move us forward. And so pretty excited about that. And lastly, it's our landscape study, which we built out and ran from November 2019 to about October 2020, and produced and released them in November 2020. This covered 18 countries in Africa and mapped out the social investors in those 18 countries, 6 in East, 6 in South, and 6 in West. And there was real value in the reports. It will tell you about the trends. They'll tell you about who's doing what. You will see there as we talk about the issues around aid and reducing aid. And those reports, you'll be able to find them in 3 regional reports and 1 Pan-African report. So please, once again, have a look at the reports as we move to the next slide. And finally, I really wanted to say thank you to our donors, and especially the USADF, who've been a major supporter of AVPA. And on the next slide, you'll be able to see a lot of the other donors who are also supporting us. But we're very grateful for the support we as an NGO are receiving from multiple partners across the continent in all sorts of manner. So we're very happy that these partners have enabled these webinars to happen, but we're exceptionally grateful that you are here with us. So please see us as a network that's bringing you together with your peers, supporting the increased flow of capital into African social investments, and anything that we can do to help you as a social investor in Africa, we'll try and do our best to support you. So others, thank you very much to everyone who's joined us, and please join us for the next set of webinars that are coming up, and follow us on social medias, sign up to all the other things that we're doing, and reach out to us through the emails we shared with you. We'll be very happy to be in touch with you. Thank you very much. And to our speakers, you are awesome. Thank you too. We're really glad you could make time to join us today. Mary Jo, thank you for a great job moderating. We're very appreciative of you making time to be part of the panel today. And we hope you'll stay as part of the pool of speakers we'll be using in the near future. So thank you very much, our speakers as well.